Hi, my name is Naki Osute. I'm Associate Vice President for Social Impact Canada at TD Bank Group. On behalf of TD, I'd like to thank you for being here today. This February is not just another African Heritage Month. We are gathering at a time where Black communities and their allies around the globe are demanding we confront the ongoing realities of anti-Black racism in every aspect of society. We must continue to push progress forward. When we launched the TD Ready commitment in 2018, our goal was to support the conditions necessary for a more equitable tomorrow. Now, 3 years later, that commitment has put us on a path to help address inequities across social, economic, and environmental spheres. We continue to seek out better ways to support the Black customers, colleagues, and communities we serve today and into the future. Over the last year, we've invested more time than ever before in dialogue with community and industry leaders from Black-led, Black-owned, and Black-serving organizations, while centering the voices of Black TD colleagues. And we're embedding these lessons learned into our institution, driving change and creating a better bank as we move forward. So on behalf of TD, I thank you for supporting our collective learning journey with your presence here today.
Welcome back to Our Stories, Our Experiences, a talk show series with me, Rajean Willis. Last episode, we talked about racial trauma and the impact that this type of injury has on African Nova Scotian people and the community collectively. This week, I have two special guests with me to discuss grief and loss. As African Nova Scotian people, as Black people, people of African descent, we experience a number of different losses that comes with lots of grief, generational grief, really, that has been compounded and passed down intergenerationally. So today, we're going to discuss grief and loss from the perspectives of all three of us, really. But with me today, I have my little bro here, Trayvon Clayton. Trayvon is one of the founders of Game Changers 902 and really a community activist. So I welcome you here today.
Appreciate it. Thanks for having
me. I also
me.
have Brother Quintrell Provost here, and he's the founder of Stop the Violence brand and movement, which has been widely recognized. And through his work, he aims to spread messages of love, hope, and has aims to raise awareness around violence and decrease it in the community. So welcome both of you to the show today. So let's just talk a little bit about this idea of collective loss, or the grief that we endure and experience and have to navigate as Black people. Trayvon, what are your thoughts when you think about this idea of loss, specifically to the African Nova Scotian community? What comes to mind?
So for me, the thought of loss here in the African Nova Scotia community is it's not just a loss for that one specific family, it's a loss for all. Mm-hmm. No matter who it is, we all know each other. I may not know your brother personally, but I know you personally, or I may not know your sister personally, but it's like we'll all be at each other's funerals. Mm-hmm. You'll see my aunt at your funeral, you'll see my uncle at your, and it's just like, that's just how small African Nova Scotian family is here in Halifax. So it's not just a loss for one, it's a loss for all, and we all feel each other's pain, and we all deal with the grief a different kind of way. So you really gotta notice and see who's surrounding you for when you do take a loss, because African Nova Scotian community is all for one. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, very tight-knit community. Like you said, everybody knows each other. And it's interesting because often when we see people we haven't seen in years, it's like in a funeral setting or some kind of event that's happening that brings people together, where the reason for it may not always be so pleasant, but it tends to be somewhere where we all come out and show love.
And that's one of the things I always say is like, don't take anything for granted, because here in Halifax, a lot of us, or a lot of people that from Nova Scotia, they move to Toronto or West or anything just for like work and things like that. And so when we take a loss, we all come home and it's like a big moment of happiness, but for the loss of someone. And it's like, appreciate who you have, appreciate your community, because we don't want to keep celebrating for these specific reasons of the loss of someone.
Right.
We want to celebrate for achieving things, for someone in the community graduating, going off to college, or making a huge achievement. We want to celebrate for those things. We need to take those things for granted and make sure that we're celebrating for those and not just the loss.
And coming together in the same type of way. Crenshaw, how about you? What are your thoughts on this idea of loss and the grief that we endure as people?
Trey hit it on the button. Like, you know, it affects the whole community. You'll be at funerals that, you know, you had childhood memories of this person, or, you know, you grew up and it's a generational thing. And I think that's the aspect that we overlook so many times, is that the generational impact. And then, you know, I hear stories of someone that passed before I was born. And then, you know, Dad tells me how the impact of that person had on their life. And, you know, that impact, you know, trickles down. And if we're talking about loss, we're not just talking about, you know, losing someone in the community. We can talk about Africville and losing that community as a whole. That was a loss here in Nova Scotia for the African Nova Scotian community. So loss can be in different forms.
Yes.
But yeah, and then just the whole aspect of us coming together. Like, you'll be at funerals and you'll be like, you didn't know this one was related to you, this one was related, and then those connections happen at funerals and such. And it's a beautiful thing, but also, you know, we come together for these moments. And that's one thing about our Black community. We're small, but we're so powerful when we come together. We always come together for losses and you know, for celebrations at the same time, which is a beautiful thing.
Yes. And you both spoke to this collective grief, you know, and I think about names like Trayvon Martin and Breonna Taylor, George Floyd, and the collective feelings that we had. You know, I don't know any of them, but like you said, you may not know someone's brother or sister, but you can feel the pain. You can feel that loss as if it was someone that you knew. And so I always think about that. And, you know, I think that's that collective nature that we have as Black people, you know, around the world. But in Nova Scotia, we share it a little bit more close to home because of the close knit and the historical implications of how we arrived here and how we were settled here and what we chose to make our home, our communities. And each of our communities is unique, but I think we still have a shared experience and understanding of certain issues. So I just want to ask you both, you know, what has your personal journeys been with grief and loss? And maybe we'll start with you, Trayvon. And, you know, it's probably still ongoing.
Damn. Mine was definitely one hell of a ride. Growing up, I seen a lot as a kid. From where I come from, I took a lot of loss, especially in the family. But the one that hit me was 2019, was Tristan, because that was someone who was in my age category, someone who was my peer, basically my little brother. Because right before that, we went on a trip together, and it was just like, he was on my wing, like, you're coming to Toronto with me, we're gonna go have fun, like, we're gonna enjoy our time being. And then we get home after that time, it's just like, boom. So that one there was a hell of a ride, because that was my first time, I'd say, I actually took a personal, like, L near, like, the closest to me. And when I lost him, I kind of just gave up on everything. Gave up on school, gave up on being a leader. I doubted myself, just said, screw everything, screw everyone. Like, I have no reason of being here. I had plenty of thought, like, grieving can make you think you're crazy. Like, I had plenty of thoughts in my head, like, just of suicidal thoughts, not looking to go commit suicide, but just stuff running through my head, like, well, I don't think I'm really that important. Like, I don't. And then after that, that following September, October, I had a seizure. Never had seizures a day in my life. No one in my family has ever had seizures a day in their life either. So it doesn't run in my family, but it's the fact that I held in all my pain. I never spoke upon it. As we said earlier, in the Black community, like, no one speaks when we're going through our grieving. Like, no one speaks upon it. Everyone wants to play, I won't say play cool, because no one's really playing cool, but everyone wants to play tough.
Yeah.
Me growing up as a kid, it was always, shut up and keep it moving. Don't say nothing, just keep it moving, be a big boy. And so I always seen it as, well, if I want to fit in like them, I got to be a big boy. I can't go back to mom and say, Mom, I fell and hurt my knee today. Or Dad, I got into a fight at school today.
Right.
It was always just keep it moving, keep it going. And then when, like I said, when Tristan died, it was keep it going. But one thing I always say to people, you can't beat mental health. That's something that will hit you at any point. Like, that can hit you. You'll hold it in for so many years. I held mine in to the age of 21. And then that's when it was like, boom. All right, it's time to let me out. Time to let the demon out of you. Like, this is, that mental health broke me down. Like, the demons got the best of me. And I was just, like I said, I lost it all and I gave up. But then a bit after that, my older brother, like, I even put on my social media, didn't know how to control anything of myself. I was just saying, like, there's no reason for me being here. And after that, about a month or two after, I won the Human Rights Award and the Peace Medal here in Halifax. And then my brother just, like, put that in my face. He was like, now do you feel like you have a reason of being here? He was like, everyone goes through loss in their lives. Because like, he went through one with his older cousin, Mary Carvery. And then my other brother on my dad's side, he went through one with Tyler Richards from Mulgrave Park. And they were all taken the same exact way, violence, gun violence. And even my best friend Tristan, taken by gun violence. And so it's just like, I should listen to these two right here because they went through the same thing that I'm going through now. So I just started taking advice, listening, and I started speaking more. Before all that, I couldn't do none of this kind of stuff. I was too cool for it. Didn't want to let none of it out because I felt embarrassed if people see me on camera talking about my pain and about my mental state. But now when you do that, you'll step outside and then you'll see a lot of people looking at you like, thank you for being that person to talk about what you're going through, because I'm going through the same thing.
Yes.
And it makes you feel way more connected with others. A lot of people take mental health as a joke, but treat mental health. I say to people, you don't let mental health control you. You control mental health. Like, everyone has it. No one's untouchable. Everyone has it. So make sure you express yourself the proper way. Don't try and express yourself a negative kind of way. So.
And I think, you know, there's so much admiration for you to be able to share because you are a young Black male that has had this lived experience of keeping things in. And, you know, by you showing up as an example, you're letting so many other young Black males and females know that it's okay to talk about grief. We all experience it in some kind of way. And even if we're thinking about loss, that's not just through someone dying, it's something that we all experience at some point.
You all take an L. It's the only way you can win. You got to take L's. No one's undefeated.
So we're going to take a quick break, and then when we come back, we'll hear Quintrell's story and talk a little bit more about grief and loss.
Hi, my name is Carlette. I'm the owner of Carlette's Pop-Up Shop located in Dartmouth, Nova Scotia. Whether you're planning a birthday party, a wedding, a baby shower, a bridal shower, a bachelorette or a bachelor party, girls' night out, or a corporate event, let us be the special addition to your event. Specializing in chocolate dipped treats, piñata cakes, cupcakes, hot chocolate bumps, floral and berry arrangements, balloons, luxury picnics, and so much more.
Welcome back to Our Story, Our Experiences, a talk show series with me, Rajean Willis. I have here with me Trayvon and Quintrell, and we're talking about grief and loss in the African Nova Scotian communities. So Quintrell, I just want to ask you, what has your experience been with grief and loss? What's your connection to this topic that gives you the passion that you've held?
Everyone knows my story, 2012, losing Kalen, being out with him that night that he was killed, and finding out from my father hurt me in a way I've never been hurt before. I had lost my grandfather earlier that year, my aunt the year before to cancer, but this one was different. They were sick, and My aunt fought her battle with cancer and gave the best fight, and my grandfather had his heart issues, but Kaylin's life was cut short in a way that it shouldn't have, and it hurt me. Like I'm telling you, it hurt me in a spot that I never thought I had, and there was a lot of thoughts in my head. I remember when it first happened, and I had a roommate at the time who was also my other best friend and first cousin, and he was all upset. He was different than me. He wants to go look for people and everything, and I was just like, bro, like we got to be different. We got to be different. Kaylin will want us to be different, and just trying to channel that hurt and that frustration into something different. I wanted to do something positive so that other families didn't go through that hurt, and other victims, that survived didn't, have to be alone and be a voice. But I was also grieving. So for 3 years, it wasn't until 2015 that I actually broke down. I remember at his birthday, May 3rd, 2015, standing at his grave, that I realized, all that I had on me, I could finally, find some kind of strength to let go. And you never really get over losing someone. You just learn to deal with each day. And I know Trayvon hit on the mental aspect of it. It was tough. There was depression. I had that, and then trying to be a smile for someone and be happy. And there was so many times everyone's like, oh, you're always smiling. But they couldn't see that I was hurting on the inside, that I was, wanting to leave and just be in a place by myself in a dark room. There was so many emotions. It was a roller coaster. But, having two parents, and their faith in God and being able to rely on them and close friends and siblings and just being able to let it out. And there was a lot of nights like I cried myself to sleep. It was tough. Grief is something that hits us all because we all have to leave this world at some point, and so your loved ones are going to grieve, and everyone grieves differently. And I've learned that over the years, the way I grieve is not going to be the way Trayvon grieves or you grieve. Right. And a lot of people don't understand that. Some people show it in anger. Some people try to, I was trying to just smile through it and do stop the violence and try and, do the change that way, but I was hurting. And, growing up in the community, you weren't allowed to cry. Like you get a spanking and everything, and they're saying, well, shut up, or I give you something else to cry for. Like, you're not supposed to cry. And I told you, I've only seen my father cry a few times in my lifetime. And that's just the male, how, Black men in the Black community are, don't show signs of weakness. And it's not a sign of weakness to cry. Actually, it's a sign of strength. And I've been telling a lot of people that you show strength when you show your emotion and be vulnerable and allow that to happen. Because mental health is real, and emotions and dealing with loss, you have to let it out at some point, because it's just going to bottle up and it's going to explode. But every day I'm, still dealing with the loss of Kaylin. Every day I'm still dealing with the loss of my aunt and my grandfather. But I just learned to make the best of it each day, and that's all we can do.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for sharing. And I think what you both speak about is, this Black male identity, not being able to really deal with your grief in the ways that you needed at the time until you were able to really figure out that I need to let this out in some kind of way and feel comfortable and confident in doing that. And so I think you both have been able to do that personally, but also professionally. You both are freely able to share at this time about how you're grieving. And I understand that it's a journey. I think we need to ensure people know that it's not like you get to a place at the end of the road where you've reached this place of, oh, my grief has gone away. It's something that we deal with for the rest of our lives. Someone
taught me that, when I lost Tristan, someone sent me an image. It was a big square. There was a large circle in the square, and then there was a sharp little box in there with sharp edges. And so the square moves, not the square, the big circle on the inside moves continuously. So that's basically your life. And so the sharp object, you bump into that. So when I was going through mine at the beginning, my circle was huge because I was just holding on to that moment with Tristan. So I kept hitting that sharp object, and it just made me think, I need Tristan, I need Tristan, I need Tristan. And so as I started to learn about grieving and the years went by, and as I started to get better with it, my circle got smaller and smaller and smaller. So every day I don't bump that sharp object, and so I can continue to move on, like not move on, but continue to grow and become better and better. But there's always going to be that time, for example, like his birthday or the day of the loss of Tristan, that's when I'll hit that sharp object. But it's like that sharp object isn't hitting me as much as, before. And so I just kind of view it as that. Control your circle and just go with it, like flow with it. Don't try and control everything else, because that's when I'll just continue to bump into that sharp object and then reflect back on Tristan a lot. So I definitely thank the person who sent me that too. So
that sounds like a great analogy, or a metaphoric image to be able to use to help you guide through and get through your journey. So how do you think that we can break the stigma, really, and the cycle of this idea that Black men specifically, but in general, Black people need to be strong in everything, and that when we deal with grief and loss, that it's something that happens, we acknowledge it happens, but how do we not just leave it there? How do we deal with it? You both have been able to, channel your energy and emotions around your own experiences. So what can we tell our viewers?
I just kind of tried to find new hobbies, new things to do, because me living through my past, I'm not going to get over any of that. And so one of the things I started doing was talking. When I first started grieving, I went to church. I'm not saying that in a bad way, as if I don't want to go to church. I just feel like church, I have to be committed. That's a whole nother side of the story. But I went to church, and my first time going to church, my first 2 times, whatever, going to church, I just felt like I was getting slapped in the face, but like a good way. And so I was always asking, people say talk to God, and I was always like, how do I talk to a person I can't even see, or a person that's nowhere to be near me? So I went to church, and that was my way of talking to God. Those slaps in the face were I'm here, I'm supporting you, and everything I heard was everything I was asking myself at church. Those were the answers coming to me, and I was like, I did not tell this pastor or this reverend to say this today.
Right.
And so that was kind of what filled me in. So I went to church for a little while, and then after church, I just started, basketball was always my way of meditation. Everyone thinks meditation is where you go sit down on a yoga mat and you pause, just breathe. It's just nah, your meditation is what makes you the happiest.
I like that.
So for me, it was basketball was one of the biggest things. And I started just to try to go to a gym, shoot the ball, play music, or even when I wanted to be alone, leave me in my room with my door closed. If my lights are off, leave me, because that's my meditation. I may look like I'm in a dark room, but in my own head, I'm just imagining everything is going as this is what I need right now. I would listen to some music and then just be this is what I need right now, because this music is giving me everything I need to hear. Right. And that's another way for people listen to music. Don't just listen to music because of the beat. There's a lot of artists out there that are literally telling you their way of grieving, their way of doing things.
That's a good point.
So really pay attention to what people are saying in their music. I started reading more. Reading was something that just kind of pushed me forward. I hated reading. I always said it growing up. I didn't start reading until about 2 years ago. And reading, I filled up my whole drawer at my house with books. Read just about every, and it's just read, because the more you see that wording, you're gonna be oh, I never heard this word before. You search it up and you find out the meaning. It's damn,
different kind of fulfillment.
I was going through this, or I experienced this, and it's just you'll see things way differently. So meditation, and it doesn't have to be you sitting down on a yoga mat. So meditation is definitely finding new hobbies and things that will keep you happy, and especially over COVID, because that's what happened right after my grieving. Spend time with my family. Like I just took a loss to my uncle 2 days ago. But once you get with your family, it's like, damn, let's talk about when he did this. Let's talk about when he made these dance moves. Or let's it's just like you forget about the bad things. You're focused on, guys, let's grow. Let's come together and grow. So appreciate everything you have, because when it's gone, I always say to people, it's gone. And don't hold no regrets to anyone. Don't hold anything against anyone. Just
I think that's a message we can all live by.
So,
how about you, Control?
I think with this stigma, the only way is to see examples like Trey, like myself, and keep speaking up. So many times we don't see those examples. As I said, I grew up, the men that I looked up to didn't show emotion. So we can be that change, coming up for the younger generation that, it's okay to cry. And I think last year when Kobe passed away, and a lot of our young Black men seeing LeBron and all those guys be emotional.
Just even the older men.
Everyone was crying.
Everyone.
It affected
Big
everyone.
brother Kobe.
I know. I remember it was just like you lost like your father or someone, like you literally started crying. And I think that showed a lot, especially, being in a pandemic, and it, just that being there, that showed that, Black men can cry. We can show emotion, but we can still be seen as a strong figure. We can still get through that. And I think showing that vulnerability is key in changing that stigma going forward, and seeing it through generations like us and such, in the examples. No, it's not easy. And sometimes you may be weak, but a sign of weakness is a sign of strength. I always tell people, man, just having that courage and such, and my faith in God has been my strength throughout all of this. I grew up in the church, grew up in, a Christian household. So I sing when I get into those moments. That's my thing. Like Fred Hammond, "No Weapon" is my song, my go-to. Just "No weapon formed against me shall prosper." And I just sing that over and over until I get that strength, to, okay, Control, get up. One thing I started doing last year was taking an hour out of the day for myself. Basically shutting off the phone, going for a drive. I usually do it during the week in the morning before I start work. I start my day off, I get up, I look in the mirror, I put on Michael Jackson, Man in the Mirror. I've been doing this for almost a year now. Yeah. Have my little 15-minute talk session with myself, take a drive, get my Tim's tea, come back, okay, I'm ready to start my day. Because it doesn't matter what happened the day before. I started today off on a positive note. Whatever happens during the day, I know I started on the right foot. And that's how I get through my days, is just, being able to do that. Reading and stuff was things that I'd done, but, singing's been my anchor. And I've always prayed, always prayed. I remember, growing up and not really, I'm like sitting there and you're praying and you're like, who am I talking to? But then as you get older, you start to really see, what prayer does. And seeing that prayer really does change things. Like when I tell someone I'm praying for you, I legit ask God, for help or whatever you need. Being and having that faith in God has been my strength. But seeing the examples is so key, and being able to share his story, Trayvon, that's a sign of strength, encouraging. So now when people see that, they're gonna be like, this young man, has shown us him. Raw, and that's a sign of strength and such. And so seeing those examples and seeing more of them, that's going to change the stigma going, forward, is seeing our young men being able to be vulnerable. And so
I always say vulnerability is a strength. Showing your emotions is a strength. You're acknowledging they're there. Yeah. And you're using them appropriately. You're controlling yourself in those moments by just having that awareness. Yeah. So when we come back after this break, we'll talk a little bit more about grief and loss in the community from our perspectives, and we'll see you soon.
Growing up, I never thought I was going to see my 18th birthday, where I'm from. Playing football took me out of certain worlds and had me in a different world.
My job
is to be that coach that I always wanted. They're getting the tools that's going to actually take them to the next level. Unbiased, objective, this is how you get there. We're authentic. We're real. And we're going to give it to you how it is. We are champions. We are excellence. We are community. We are family. We are the best, and we are the place where you will leave your mark. We are the home for all athletes.
This is Our Story, Our Experiences, a talk show series with me, Rajean Willis. I'm here with Trayvon and Quintrella. We're talking about grief and loss in the African Nova Scotian community. So before the break, we talked about their own personal experiences with grief and loss. And so now we're going to continue the conversation and talk a little bit more about how we can break this stigma around this idea of being weak means to show your emotions, which I think we've kind of challenged that here today. So Quintrell, I just want to ask you a question. You know, you've been acknowledged nationally for the work that you've done with Stop the Violence, but you've also been held accountable by community, and people, you know, really want to ensure that what you're doing is in the best interest of the community. So I just want to give you an opportunity to respond to that and just to share a little bit about, you know, where you really come from and what it is that you hope to do through your work.
I remember, you know, over the years, it's been tough, it's been stressful, been times you want to give up. I remember when I started this, I was no expert in anti-violence advocacy. I was just doing it out of grief. And I remember when, after the first march in 2012, in September 2012, a lot of people told me, like, you got to keep this going and everything. And I was just going to do a march and that was it. You know, I was grieving, you know what I mean? But then, you know, I took a month, and I don't like to do things halfway. So I'm either all in or nothing. And I remember I decided to go all in. And I remember 5 months after, I was assaulted at a party and everything. And then that really put in perspective that this was not going to be easy. And, you know, it's going to be a long road ahead. And so not everyone's going to like what you do. But I grew up as a person, and I think this where a lot of me doing things a certain way, I was trying to please everybody. And when you're trying to please everybody, someone is not going to be pleased. And I got a lot of backlash for that. I'm doing it this way because, well, I talked to this person, they said, you know, it's best to do this way. Right. And people that know me, I'm a genuine person. I'm not doing this for myself. I don't gain anything out of this. This is volunteer time. Like I have a full-time job, you know what I mean? That's what I do, you know what I mean? I was doing it because I was grieving and I wanted to help the community. And a lot of people lost sight of that because they seen me, you know, in the media and stuff, but they discredit the work that I was doing behind the scenes. Me at the schools, me doing mentorship, me talking to inmates over, like giving up my number to families for their child that's locked up for me to mentor and stuff. All that stuff that I was doing behind the scene. And that's why over the last couple of years, I try to stay away from mostly talking in the media because people thought that was Stop the Violence, you know, and it's not about that, you know. All these awards and recognitions, yeah, they're cool and all, and you know, I'm thankful for the recognition. But if I could bring back Tyler Richard, if I could bring back Kaylin, if I could bring back these ones that lost their lives, Tristan, you know, that lost their lives of violence, I give up all of that because it's not about me. You know what I mean? It's about, you know, it's about them. It's about, you know, that's why I try and do what I can. And you know, over the lot, like I knew a march wasn't going to stop the violence. And a lot of people got to understand that it's not the march. And I can't reach those that are, you know, legit in the game because I've never been down that road. So they're not going to take advice from me. But what I can do is I can reach those kids. And that's what my main focus is, going to the schools, making sure I get to the kids before they go down that road to pick up a gun and stuff, and try and do what I can to help out that way. And it's crazy because a lot of people that was giving me, you know, a hard time in the beginning, now they're some of my biggest supporters. Because after they came up to me, I'm a person that you can approach and talk, and I'll have a real conversation with you. And when they had that conversation with me, and I told them, this is like literally, I wanted to give up, stop the violence so many times, but me seeing my son and wanting him to grow up on the less violent side, me seeing the kids, me seeing these mothers, being at these funerals, that's what motivates me to continue to do it. If someone else is not going to do it, I'll do it. But having those conversations, with those people and telling them how real, like this is never been about me. Me taking the threats. I've been threatened at knife and guns and stuff through this. A lot of people, I don't talk about it because that's not my focus. But being able to have those real conversations, I tell people, you can come up and talk to me about anything. I'm not that type of person that if you have your opinion, I'm gonna not, if we disagree, it's gonna be me respectfully disagreeing, but I'm still gonna respect you at the end of the day. And having those conversations really changed a lot for me over the years. And a lot of those people that, I was getting backlash years ago are some of my biggest supporters. And, having those real conversations really changed a lot. And I said, I don't do this. So I had to start doing things the way I'm gonna do it and be able to take, constructive criticism. And a lot of people don't understand constructive criticism makes you better. Be able to take it. It's not people discrediting you. So I've been able to take that and, take into account, like when people voice their opinions to me, I listen. And I don't think I'm bigger than anybody. Someone said to me the other day at basketball, was like, yo, bro, like, it's crazy that you still come out here and ball with us. I'm just like, guys, I'm still Quintrell. Like, I go to work every day. That's just something that I do, for the people that have lost loved ones, for the victims that have survived. And I'm never gonna change. Like if someone Facebook messaged me, I don't know you, but I'll still reply. It may not be this week because I have so many messages, but I'll reply to you because everyone's important. And I'm not bigger than this. This cause isn't about me. It's about those victims. It's about those families. And so when I started explaining that to people, and people start seeing that and hearing that out of my mouth, they start to realize that, I thought this was about you. I thought like someone told me, oh, I thought you were trying to get famous off of someone's death. I was like, nah, but I lost someone. You know what I mean? So when I talked to them and had those conversations, it changed a lot. Being able to have real conversations and being able for people to be able to come up and talk to me about anything. Come up, if you gotta yell. I'm gonna still stand there and listen to you at the end of the day, and then I'm gonna respectfully give you my reply. And you can take it however way you want it. But having my support in my communities has been tremendous through this, going into communities and, especially talking to our elders, and they're like, oh, I got so much support for you. I see you on the news, and, they all watch the news. And so having those conversations and I'm always looking for advice and new things, you know what I mean?
I think that's what it's about, being open to hearing what people have to say, because like you said, you can't please everybody. And everybody has an opinion and they're entitled to that.
And exactly.
And so, what I think we can conclude is that we care about mitigating and ending violence in our communities. And, if that's at the core of it, then there can only be good things that come from that. And so just to wrap up, I think, want to give some final points on what you think that we need to do as a collective to take ending violence in our communities to the next level. It's a big question.
I was going to say, would I get the big question at the end?
You'll both have a chance to answer. And this is your thoughts, right?
What we know have
there's
to do
things that are happening. But
get rid of violence. And what was your?
Yeah, like to end this violence that we see happening in our communities, whether it's a result of homicide. There's so much grief that we've experienced through murders that have happened in our communities.
One thing I will say for sure, within the Black community, we got to stop with the dividing. We got to stop with the competing, because we're treating it like it's a game right now, and it's not what it is. Because like I said before, when we lose that person, guaranteed I will see that person or that person at the funeral.
Right.
But when we lost that person, now they're grieving, and then there's other people like, all right, this is what you're doing, I'm gonna do it this way. I'm coming back for this way. And it's just like, it's not no video game where you get unlimited lives and you can continue to come back.
Right.
There's no resetting that. So definitely stop dividing ourselves between like north, east, Mulgrave, pubs, Uniac, all that kind of stuff, because that's how I grew up with my communities. And it was just like, when I'm from the square, we hated people from the park, or we hated people from North Preston. And it was just like, why? Like me, I'm someone, I went down to the park, I went to North Preston, everyone was just like, Trey, you're going to all these places. Well, I don't have a problem, but it's just like, I don't want, like, that's the point of, you got to make yourself, like, get yourself out of that kind of stuff and make sure, open up to people.
Open your circle.
Open up to people. And so like, it was just like, you can't focus on that. Like, yeah, you do have to watch yourself, because bullets, they may say I'm aiming for this person, but bullets don't have names on them or anything like that. But don't just judge everything off of what you're seeing. Like, don't hate
what
that.
has always been. Because that's what your parents were like, or
and whatever. Like I'm saying, it was all competing. Because me growing up, it was like, oh, the square, we're better than North Preston. We got more stuff than North. It's like, man, we're all African Nova Scotian community. What are we going on about? And I kind of think that's something we realized over the COVID years, is that we need to come together, because, or especially over the, like, racism is definitely the biggest thing that we all kind of realized and paid attention to. Yeah. Because we're dying because of skin color now. We're not dying because of, I got a problem. We're dying because of skin color now. Yeah. So it's like, I seen a picture, we all probably seen it, the black male in the middle, police officer with the gun on the right, and then the black community with the gun to him on the left. And it's just like, I never had that, but I felt that image as a real life thing. It's just like, who do I go to if I can't even go to no one in my community, and I can't go to the police because they kill me because of my skin color? So we got to stop dividing ourselves. We got to come together and actually be like, yo, this is what we got to do to beat the system. Because this is what the system wants. Why do you think they created poverty? Why do you think they separated North Preston from everything? Why do you, like,
it runs deep.
You have to pay attention to this image that they are trying to create for us. Right. And we have to, all right, if anything, if we want to compete, that's what we got to do our competing against. Not saying do it a violent way, but voice your opinion. Because that's where it started for me. I voiced my opinion, and then things just shifted. Yeah. And then it was just like, whoa. So speak, be you. Don't be something you know you're not. And that's something I always tell to kids growing up now. Be you. Yeah,
I love that. I have a quote, don't forget to be you.
So,
Quintrell, any final thoughts that you want to mention?
He hit it on the button, the division. We don't understand how powerful we are together. Every system is built against us, and we're making it harder on ourselves. When it comes to violence, there's so many different solutions, at the government level, at policing, and then in our homes. And in our communities, we got to stop glorifying these guys, that are doing that are killing each other, you know what I mean? And everything, and kind of, looking at them as, they like we're celebrating them and stuff, you know what I mean? Like, you're tough and everything, looking at it as cool and stuff. It's not cool. We're already, we already have enough things against us. Systems, education system, we have the justice system, all those systems that weren't built for us, that we're fighting against. And the thing about it is that if we come together, if we just come together one time, there's unlimited power that we have.
All I say, they need us.
Yeah.
If you look at everything, the culture of ours, they need us. The things that, like sports, they need us. And so
our presence is needed. We're here. We've been here. We will continue to be here and continue to contribute to this province, this nation, this world, right? So I want to just express my sincerest gratitude to both of you for joining me today. I know it takes a lot of courage to be able to share your vulnerabilities.
It's grieving.
That's grieving, and it's part of it. And you both said it. Yeah. It's about being an example, showing others that you know, you can speak out and it's okay. You know, actually it's probably a good thing.
Yeah.
It's probably a cool thing, you know, it's a
Man.
necessary thing.
Cry. If you gotta
And
cry,
cry.
Because at the end, you're gonna be sitting there laughing and smiling.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I feel good now. I
Yes,
just lost.
you know, you can't deny what your body says. It
Right.
feels good to let that stuff out,
Yeah.
physically, mentally, emotionally. So again, thank you both. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Our Stories, Our Experiences, a talk show series with me, Rajean Willis. We talked with Trayvon Clayton and Quintrell Prevost about their experiences personally with grief and loss. And now I have with me Dr. Barb Hamilton Hinch as another guest. I invited Barb to this show because she's done work on grief and loss in the African Nova Scotian community, specifically when we had a large number of people passing due to gun violence, which we talked about with Trayvon and Quintrell a little bit. And so part of your role in that was to help us to create some grief counseling or grief facilitation groups to help people process their grief, their loss. But I really want to talk to you about the different types of losses that specifically people of African descent and people to Nova Scotia, so African Nova Scotians, have endured when it comes to cultural traditions, you know, what we face on a daily maybe when it comes to racism and in the workplace, and maybe being denied a promotion, you know, for work that we know we're capable of doing. So I just want to get a little bit of your thoughts on what are some of the types of loss that we experience and have experienced culturally, and how do we navigate through those?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And thank you for asking it. Especially when we know we often think about loss with grief. And we don't think about loss with land. We don't think about loss with education and culture. We don't think about the impact, as Dr. Joy DeGroux talks about, the post-traumatic slave syndrome and how we've been impacted by that.
Yes.
And so as an academic and researcher, more importantly as a community member, and my partner comes from the community of Africville, and I'm from the community of Beachville. And when I hear historically what has happened to those communities, and when I look at the north end of Halifax, and even just recently I was driving down there and I said, where am I?
Right.
This didn't feel like the north end of Halifax that I grew up with. As I traveled to Beachville to go to my community church, the developers, this isn't my community that I grew up with.
Right.
As I've gotten into a position where I moved out of my community for different reasons, and my children aren't being raised in a Black community and have lost that sense of what does it mean to be raised by uncles and aunts. And so when I have that conversation with them, and my way to make sure they stay connected is going to their communities.
Right.
But growing up, I could just walk next door if I needed an egg for a cake.
Yeah.
And there wasn't any question, just like, here's the egg. I don't have that same experience in the communities that we live.
Right.
And so that loss is really real when you think about community strength, when you think about resilience. And that's how so many of us have been able to achieve what we've been able to achieve.
Absolutely.
I always tell folks, I've not done this in isolation. I stand on the shoulders of my community. I stand on the shoulders of my ancestors.
Right.
And I think to a degree that has been lost, especially when you talk to young people who don't talk about how their community has raised them, who don't talk about their culture and their history, but talk about it from a very individual perspective.
Yes.
None of us have done anything on our own. And if it wasn't for the sacrifices of those who've gone before us, we wouldn't have what we have. And so even when you think about land, and I think some of us don't know the value of the land we have.
It's true.
That we're so quick to say, you know what, I just want to move and get out of my Black community, or I want to move and go to Ontario, I want to move and go to the States, or I want to move and go to the city. And because the developers know the value of our land,
That's right.
they come in and they buy it.
Yeah.
And so we're seeing our communities getting smaller and smaller. The other thing that we're missing, and I appreciate those who are able to maintain it, and I, especially on Sundays, are very difficult for me. My mom passed in September of last year, and not to COVID. She was fighting with cancer, but soul food Sundays, right? Sunday traditions
Have
so
totally
how many
changed.
of our young families still go to church on Sundays? And we traditionally would then go to our grandparents' home. And at the table, that's where you learn the stories. That's where the oral history is passed down. That's where you have debates about politics and what was going on in the world around food, around community gathering. And so you knew traditional foods. And so if you talk to our children now about traditional foods, they probably would look at us and say, what? You used to eat pig feet, you used to eat pigtails, you used to eat corned beef and cabbage. What is that?
Right.
Right? And so it's often saddens me. And I'm glad that there's a lovely woman by the name of Wendy Lee Wilson who does a food column and talks about traditional foods that they used to eat in Africa and in Uniacke Square to try and maintain a little bit of that sense of culture. I appreciate the desire and the need to assimilate and want to have more than those who've gone before. But I don't value it when we do it at the expense of forgetting about where we came from.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's so important. Yeah, that is a key point right there, because often, there's this mentality that when you do better, you get out, and you maybe don't come back. Some people do, retirement or whatnot. But I think too, there's these fears that, well, if I live in my community that I grew up in, then, when you think about, for example, your home value,
yes.
Those type of things that we think about as you get older. But what means more, is it returning back or is it the equity that's in your home?
Right.
And for everyone, it's different. I think we can appreciate that. But I do understand what you're saying in terms of this feeling of community loss, especially when you don't have that connection. We know our communities are getting smaller. Some are not even existent anymore. But I appreciate what you say about the land too, because you really can, I don't know, for me, I get a different feeling when I'm in an Indigenous, African Nova Scotian, historic community.
Yes.
I feel the presence
of course, the warmth, the big house.
That's right. And the ancestral presence,
Like, I'm envious of you being able to live in a historical African Nova Scotian Indigenous community.
Right.
And I am so happy that you're able to do that and raise your children there. Because the other thing that's missing is the aunties.
Yes.
Right? So
that
the
extended
aunties,
family.
The extended family that did both the discipline and did the raising. Right? And that if you got locked out of your home, you just had to knock on the auntie's door and you could get in.
Yeah.
And you could leave your key at the neighbor's house and they would open the door for your child and support them, right? We don't have that sense of community the way we did. And those of us who do have it, we have to fight to maintain it.
Right.
So yeah, that's an interesting take on it. And even in terms of the education.
Yes.
The education system, particularly the public school system, really scares me when it comes to our children. And we are losing our children to so many other societal pressures. And that to me is also a sense of loss. Like, some of us are afraid to approach our children to talk about some of these issues because we're not sure where they're coming from.
That's right.
Where their mindset is, where they are mentally.
Yeah.
And if they're able to hear some of what we're wanting to share with them. And so for me, it was always very important to also take young people when I could to Mother Africa. So I used to take anybody who wanted to go every 2 years to Ghana, to get grounded with the ancestors and to get that warm hug, even just from the continent.
That's right.
Which is so important.
It seems like the next level, just a different type of experience.
Yeah, and I appreciate the loss that comes with grief, because during COVID particularly, we haven't been able to grieve and celebrate as an African Nova Scotian family and community. Right. And so some of us haven't had full closure on the personal loss. True. And some of us still don't have full closure on land loss. And some of us don't have closure on identity loss, right? And so there's so many different losses that we need to address. And I'm glad that you're doing this work, because people don't often think about loss in those ways, and that's important to do so.
That's right. And so, when we think about complex grief and, what we grapple with as African Nova Scotians on a daily, carrying all of this with us into our workplaces, into our school system, into the spaces that we go into, and then being faced with the daily struggles that we might encounter when it comes to anti-Black racism and different types of discrimination that can really just slap us in the face,
So adding to that, as you say that, and it's important, and I appreciate also your other position, when there's loss for employment opportunities.
Yes, absolutely.
So where do people go if they put all they could into applying for a job, or even social justice work, when you're advocating against racism, discrimination in your community, injustices that have been happened, and when you lose a certain case that you should have won, where do people go for that loss, for that employment loss? And sometimes people have to stay in places where they applied for a job, they probably was the best candidate, didn't get it, and they still have to go to that same workplace without that support. And how traumatic that can be, especially for people of African descent,
right?
African Nova Scotians who are looking for opportunities to advance and take that risk, and then it doesn't happen.
Absolutely. And, you know, and then it's the next part of it. How do we talk about these things and not feel as though we're, you know, putting ourselves in a position of vulnerability that takes away from our dignity. I think being vulnerable is amazing, and it takes, you know, real time to get to a place where you're able to allow yourself to do that and to share openly. But I hope that a series like this and talking about some of this stuff will, you know, really help to empower people, educate and enlighten our community members specifically to know that it's okay to talk about loss.
I always
it's okay
say
to grieve.
strength comes from people who ask for help.
Yes, I am a total believer of that, and I would agree wholeheartedly. And I think we need to do more of opening the dialogue up, being the example, and from there we can begin to have these conversations ongoingly to help people feel like they're in a place where they have that safety to express. And then we can get on with our healing journeys.
I appreciate that.
So thank you so much, Dr. Brad, for joining me today and having this courageous conversation about grief and loss. Next episode, we will talk about collective healing and wellness, which will build upon this episode. So please join us again for our stories, our experiences, a talk show series with me, Rajean Willis. Thanks.